I don't know if I'll have the rain jacket.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining the ARC of Fort Bend County today for a very special event. We're joined by Monte Canedo, an interpreter with Brazos Bend State Park. He's here to share a virtual nature walk with us today. And Monte is going to be our guide as she walks along 40-acre trail to describe the natural environment and animals at the park. If this is your first time joining a program event with the ARC of Fort Bend County, welcome, and we hope to see you at some of the other programs and events that we hold throughout the year. I'm Carrie Axtell, one of the program directors here at the ARC of Fort Bend County. The ARC is a nonprofit organization for people of all ages who have an intellectual or developmental disability. We advocate for and with people with IDD to provide information and referral to community resources. We provide tools and guidance to families as their loved one transitions from childhood into adulthood. And we provide various social, recreational, and athletic programs. Just a few of our fun programs include a monthly Teen Tween Social, 20-something social group, and 10 different Special Olympics sports and social recreation events for adults. If you'd like to know more about what we do here at the ARC of Fort Bend County, you can check out our website, arcoffortbend.org, our Facebook page, email, or call us and we'll share more details with you. And I've posted that contact information for you in the chat box. Before I introduce you to our trail guide today, I'd like to remind everyone to please keep your device on mute throughout the program. We're going to record this presentation, and staying on mute will help us to hear the presenter clearly. If you do have questions during the presentation, we definitely want to hear those because your questions are amazing. So please post those in the chat box. The chat box is located near the bottom of your screen, and just type your question as soon as you think about it. Monse will be taking those questions throughout. We'll encourage that. So if you think of questions, please type her in there and I will let her know what your questions are. So it is my pleasure to introduce the virtual nature walk at Brazos Bend State Park. If you haven't visited Brazos Bend State Park before, I highly recommend checking it out. It's beautiful. And the park is right here in our own backyard in Fort Bend County. It's located on FM 762 in Meadville, and it's just a 25-minute drive from Highway 59 down Crab River Road. So if you want to visit the park right now due to COVID-19, the state parks do have kind of they're limiting their entrance there. So you must make a reservation. The best way to do that is going online or calling their customer service center. They also have a Texas State Parks app, the information for their reservation is in the chat box, and their reservation website is texasstateparks.reserveamerica.com. And our interpreter today, Monse, prior to working at Brazos Bend State Park, Monse worked as a scuba diving instructor for several years. And this is what led her to her interest in attending Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi. And that's where she earned her degree in biology with a focus on animal biology. While she was in Corpus Christi, she volunteered for 4 years at a wildlife rehabilitation center, and she learned about wildlife and helping to rehabilitate those injured animals so they could be released back into the wild. And that's where her inspiration to become a park ranger began. So after graduating from college in 2018, Monse started working at Brazos Bend State Park as a customer service representative. And after a year in that position, she accepted the opportunity to become the park naturalist and volunteer coordinator. And since 2019, she's been in charge of the park's nature center operations, volunteer management, educational programs, and interpreters, and she continues to share her love for wildlife through these amazing programs. So we are thrilled, Monse, that you are here with Jim today to talk and walk us through 40-acre trails. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. So I just want to introduce Jim here to everyone. He's our park superintendent, so he's in charge of Brazos Bend State Park, and he's going to be joining us here today. So if you guys have any questions for him too, feel free to ask those while we have them on hand. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The idea for today is we are going to get you guys started learning a little bit about the park. So I'm going to start you guys off at the map and kind of showing you guys a little bit about Brazos Bend, kind of where all of this started, a little bit about the river, and then we're actually going to take you guys on the walk. We're going to see several different ecosystems in this one hike, and we're going to try to see what we can find. Now today is a bit cloudy, so we might see alligators, we might not. We are going to be looking for some to show you guys in the wild, We have spotted a mother alligator with her hatchlings out here before, and she's been pretty consistent. So hopefully she's out there today for me to show you guys. But again, the cloudy weather does change things a little bit out here. But we'll see what we can find. The cool thing about out here, it changes every day. It's never the same thing. So it's always really exciting to come out here and see what's new today. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna flip the camera around and take you guys to the map real quick. Alrighty, okay, so this is a map of Brazos Bend State Park. You can see everything that's going on. We have a lot of different trails, and we're only gonna be walking this one trail today. That's a 40-acre lake. We're gonna take it about halfway through it. Our goal is gonna be the observation tower, and that's about a 2-story or 3-story high wooden structure where actually several ecosystems come together. So we're gonna walk at least half of that trail and then see kind of where we're at there, and maybe even do the rest of the loop, again, depending where we're at. But Brazos Bend State Park actually at one point used to be part of the Brazos River. Right now, this is the Brazos River. It only borders one side of our park. It's pretty small compared to what it used to be. But many, many years ago, it actually used to be huge. And it actually did used to run all across what the park is now. That is why we actually tend to flood whenever the river actually rises. We are what's called a meander scar of the river. So at one point, the river did actually used to run through what the park is today. And whenever it does rise, it reclaims that territory once again, which is why a lot of times we are part of that flood system. As we walk through the trail, you guys are going to see moments when the trail actually dips down. This park is pretty flat. We're in flat land of Texas. However, we are gonna see a few dips, and that is actually part of when the river used to be around here. That actually is a bank of the Brazos River from a long, long time ago. So we're gonna take you guys on this walk and show you guys all of that. So let's go on to the walk. We are gonna start out walking through actually Hardwood Forest. So we're gonna start entering here into the forest, full of different plants, an incredible ecosystem, great for birds, great for deer, raccoons. You'll see all sorts of things out here, armadillos. This is home to so many different animals. We have this enormous and really majestic live oak trees all throughout the park. And these guys are a huge component of these hardwood forests that we have here in the park. I'm gonna turn it a little to show you guys a little bit of what we're working with here. All these plants work together with each other. They make one big habitat, one ecosystem, and they actually do help support each other in some cases. For example, let's take a look at this one right here, if I can get the camera right on it. This here is called Spanish moss. You'll see it all throughout the park here, especially hanging off of our live oak trees, very abundant. And the thing about this plant, it's actually neither Spanish nor is it a moss. So a long time ago, someone decided that this plant looked like the Spaniards' beards when they were out here. So they started calling it Spanish, and they actually thought it resembled moss. So they started calling it Spanish moss. However, again, it's actually not even a moss. It's not even closely related to moss. This funky looking plant is more closely related to pineapples than actually moss. It does have a little seed. So right there, that kind of flower looking thing I'm holding, that is actually its seed pod, or the flower that it gives out. Whenever that opens, there's a lot of little seeds in there that just come out and start spreading through the air and go somewhere else. Now this plant actually is called an epiphyte, or it's a type of epiphyte. which is actually a air plant. That plant does not root on anything. It literally just hangs there the way you're seeing it hanging on that. And it takes its nutrients and water from the environment, so from the air. So as the air blows through it, all the nutrients that air is carrying, that's where it absorbs it from. And every time it rains, that's the water that it takes in, or all the moisture from the humidity out here. That's all it really needs. So that's really an air plant. No roots, nothing like that. We always tell people to always look everywhere around you. There's so much to see when you look up, when you look down, when you look in every direction. Use all your senses, except perhaps taste. We really don't want to go through tasting random things in the forest. This is a great example here. This is called Yopon Holly. We probably have all seen this tree around, maybe at our houses, maybe around there. Very popular one for Christmas. Has this really nice looking berries on it. But if you go and actually eat those, they have been known for causing diarrhea, vomiting, and really upset stomachs. Especially in children, they can be pretty dangerous. So you never want to go out and start just grabbing things off of trees and tasting them, even if they look as pretty as this little berry here. So when we say use all your senses, use your smell, maybe touch with caution, listen though, look very closely, and just kind of pay attention to all your surroundings when you're out in nature. Another really interesting thing about this tree, it's not only the berry that can be harmful to you, but the leaves are actually caffeinated. So this is a naturally caffeinated plant that we have around here. You can actually roast the leaves and create a tea out of it. And it's going to be a highly caffeinated tea. And that's actually a natural thing for this plant, which is pretty interesting for us.
Monse, we have a question about
yes.
the plant there and also the moss. Is that something that maybe one of the animals around there eats?
So from everything that I've read so far, the Yopon Holly, that berry, is actually poisonous to everything. So I'm not sure that it actually gets eaten by anything, because it does induce that vomiting. And it does give you that upset stomach. The Spanish moth doesn't get eaten by something, but it actually serves a lot of different purposes. It actually gets used as a home for different animals. A lot of insects live in it. There's a species of bat that uses it also for as a home. There's a specific species of spider that tends to live in it as well. And that moss has actually through history been used in many different forms. As a matter of fact, that Spanish moss used to be used for stuffing mattresses and pillows. I don't know that today that would be very comfortable. I'd rather have my mattress today, but they used to use it for stuffing furniture. And many years ago, the natives used to use that for clothing. So females would use that for skirts, and for diapers and different clothing items. But it's not necessarily a food item. It's more used for homes and habitat for other animals. Birds use it sometimes also for their nests. All right. So we walked through the forest and we're changing a little bit of ecosystem right now. It's not the most pristine, but we actually are walking into prairie. The prairie, a pristine prairie, would be composed of all soft plants, nothing woody. So all those kind of trees and wooded plants you see are actually technically the weeds of the prairie. They're the thing that does not belong. So typically we don't think of a tree as being a weed, but whenever you're in the prairie, that's the weed. That's what does not belong. It's not like those little flowers that we see in our front yard sometimes that we want to take up because they are invading. Here, all these little woody plants are the invasions. Prairies are actually the most endangered ecosystem out there. People tend to see a prairie and just think, wow, someone forgot to mow their lawn. And very easy to just take it apart and mow it. But the prairie is actually very, very vital. The plants that grow naturally in a prairie have roots that go very, very far below the ground. So all those roots actually hold the ground together. They help with erosion. They help with flooding. They absorb a lot of that water. They stop a lot of that water, but they also grab onto the ground so erosion can't happen. So it's a very important ecosystem. Texas at one point in time used to be like 90% prairie, and now it's the minority of it that actually is prairie. And that's why a lot of times, whenever, for example, Harvey happened, a lot of towns flooded because now everything is metal, now everything is road, now everything is not prairie. So now there's nothing to stop the flooding, there's nothing to stop the erosion, and that's why a lot of the rivers, a lot of the roads started to fall apart. It's because they're not made for that. But this prairie is also home for a bunch of different birds, a huge variety of snakes, spiders, bugs, insects of all sorts, pollinators, and a lot of beautiful flowers. So I'm gonna try to step in real quick just to show you guys some of the flowers blooming here. That's called a blue mist flower. We have some other species of flowers here, and I forget what this white one is called right at this moment. The yellow rod is also starting to bloom, and that's this beautiful yellow flower right here. So a lot of your wildflowers actually come from the prairie, and it is unfortunate that it's such an endangered ecosystem.
Hey, Monse, are there some animals that's where their main habitat is just the prairie, where that's where you will usually find them?
There actually is several species of snakes that prefer the prairie as their home. Here, in particular in Brazos, Penn, if we find tarantulas, it's likely going to be in the prairie. You have actually certain species of sparrows that are specific to the prairie, and you only see them in the prairie also. So yeah, there's several different types of animals that you call the prairie home specifically. Now, a lot of other animals use it as a home. You can see deer in there pretty often, and they hide really well in there. You can see all sorts of pollinators, all sorts of insects. It's a great place to go and collect insects or see a variety of them. So yeah, a lot of different animals do live in there. Okay. We're past the prairie, and unfortunately the phone doesn't give this a whole lot of depth, but we're walking back into the forest, and we actually have our first big dip here. Now, the camera here shows it fairly flat, but we're about to actually go downward into one of the banks that used to be a bank of the Brazos River. So we could say that right here, we're actually at the top of the bank, and we're kind of walking towards the bottom of where the Brazos River used to be. And we're about to get ourselves, as we walk downhill here, to what at one point was the bottom of the river. I'll try to see if I can spot the water line on some of these trees from when it flooded here, just to show you guys where that was. And ultimately, we actually would have been completely submerged underwater when that flood happened. So if we see that line, I'll point it out to you guys. So we went through forest, we've been through prairie, we're back to forest, and we're about to make another change. All these places where multiple ecosystems come together, they're called ecotones. And that's that kind of merging of different ecosystems, which actually opens up the doors to a lot more habitat, a lot more animals, and a lot more to see. Now we're approaching the lake, so it's getting a little bit more windy. I'll try to speak up above the wind, but if you guys can't hear me, just let me know. All right, so we have made another change here. We're in a lake. Right now we're in the shallow part of the lake. So it's overgrown with a lot of water plants. Ultimately, this part of the lake, it's starting to turn into what's called a marsh because of how shallow the water is on this end. As it gets deeper, you can kind of see far back there, the actual water from the lake. And on this side of the trail, we are in a swamp. So we're right between two different ecosystems right here. A marsh, by definition, actually has a shallow enough water to where you can get all these soft plants growing. Now, in the middle over there, those islands have the trees. So we're focusing on this greenery here at the bottom. And that right there is all soft plants that have been able to grow because of how shallow that water is. When the water is that shallow, it allows for the sunlight to penetrate and creates more plant life. So that's what's happening here. On this side, we have a swamp. A swamp, by definition, also has water at least part of the year, but it also has trees. So you can kind of think of a swamp being like a flooded forest, and you can think of a marsh being like a flooded prairie. For us this year, it was actually a lot drier than other years. So that's actually inviting a lot of different plants to continue to grow and overgrow more than they normally do. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. It's that used to be a lot more water. Now you can hardly see the water and you see a lot of overgrown plants. And that's because with the drier season this year, we didn't have enough or high enough water levels to help control that overgrowth. See all that Spanish moss we just learned about a little bit ago? A lot of times people ask, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is there anything that you all have to do to help maybe to either maintain that environment? I mean, I know it's all natural, but
Right.
I didn't know if there's anything that you all do to kind of help it not get too overgrown or to kind of be taken over by invasive species or something like that.
That is a great question. We do in some areas where we can do, where we can actually go in, if the water gets shallow enough or dry enough, we can go in with shredders and actually shred out those overgrown areas. We can try to go in and spray some of those plants to cut them back and keep them from just overspreading. However, one thing that we really battle with here is two things. Getting into the swamp, we really can't do. We can't get like a boat or something in there. Those trees are too thick for us to get there. So whatever's back there, unfortunately, stays. So the next time we actually flood, it picks all of that up and it carries it all over the place again. And it respreads a lot of those invasive species for us. One of the big ones we are dealing with right now is the water hyacinth. And that one, when it blooms, it's a gorgeous purple flower. Like you look at it and you're like, that's just beautiful. But it's horribly invasive, and you're gonna get to see a lot of it here in a little bit.
Hey, Monty.
Marsh, yeah.
I think the audio went down for a little bit. I don't know if maybe something came disconnected from the phone or something. It was just a moment ago, it was easier to hear you, and then all of a sudden it sounded like it was further away. Oh, there, it's back again.
Okay.
There you go. It's clear again.
We're hitting a little bit of rain, so we're just gonna keep going under the umbrella. But yeah, if that happens again, just let me know.
Oh yeah, it did go down again. Huh, I don't know. I thought it came back there for a minute, but it is kind of a really low. Let me say something again. Let me see if I can hear it.
Can you hear me now?
I think that sounds a little better.
I can speak up more if we need to.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit closer.
Okay. Let me actually flip it around and I can get it even closer. There we go. Can you guys hear me better now?
I think maybe it's starting to get kind of garbled, so maybe it's the distance.
It might be more the signal as we walk through. It looks to me like I have good signal, but it might be changing as we walk through the park.
Yes, yes, because it is starting to get where I could hear you just a little bit better. So yeah, I think
Okay.
it may be the cell service.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're depending on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are getting here to more, or like deeper water, I should say. So that's where you can see the lake itself. It is home to a lot of different birds, a lot of different plants, a lot of different animals. And I'm looking for the mother alligator here. So this is usually where she hangs out, but I'm not seeing her right now. To see if we can spot her or her babies. Usually you can spot her right away. So what I'm looking for here is actually little yellow lines in the water. Whenever alligators are young, whenever they're first hatched, they have little yellow stripes all over their bodies, and they're used for camouflage. They help them hide really well in the plants, but it also helps break their silhouette in the water. That way, whenever there's that kind of glare of light in the water, that's exactly what their stripes look like. So it hides them really well. But sometimes when the water is still like it is right now, you can spot a bunch of little yellow lines if you know what you're looking for. And those are the hatchlings. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing any right now. So we'll try a second spot that I've seen a mother at, and hopefully I can show you guys at least that much. There's a lot of flowers blooming out here today. So it looks really pretty. Like I said, this changes all the time. Whenever you visit the park, it can be something different today from tomorrow. Some of these flowers bloom one day and then the next they're gone, or just for a quick season and then they're gone. Right now for the fall, these flowers are starting to bloom. And these are called the burr marigolds. And they grow in those kind of wet conditions in the swamp. But I'll flip it back to the lake here. This trail is really good also for biking or just hiking. So if you ever get the chance to come out here to the park, this is one of the more popular trails. Really nice, kind of flat, easy for anyone. So if you have strollers or mobility scooters, wheelchairs, or just want something easy to walk, this is a great spot to be. And you get to see a lot of different animals out here. Yeah, and a lot of times along this stretch, we do see alligators. You do see this nice signs of them. Always stay on the trail, keep your dogs on the leash. That's good trail etiquette. Unfortunately, nowadays, people are all about the picture. So we are running into the issue of people coming out here, seeing an alligator and trying to get too close to take a picture with the alligator. Don't do that. Alligators can have a really quick burst of movement if they so choose and turn around very quickly. They can react pretty fast to something. So if you're in their territory and trying to touch their tail or grab them, no, it's not good. All right, so this is why we always want to look everywhere we go, and kind of look for little evidence of things that may have happened at some point in time. Do you guys see right here between the plants, that line of water? Any ideas what that could be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like
it's a little path. Yeah, it's an animal path. So that tells us that likely an alligator swam kind of where you can see that trail of water and has come across here at some point. So that is evidence that something has been around here pretty recently. Sometimes when you walk through the wooded areas of the park, you also see some holes on the ground. That can be evidence that there was an armadillo there, or maybe some wild pigs. So when you walk out here, don't just walk around looking at the ground. Look at these little things, evidence of things. Where has the animal been? Are there tracks? Do you notice that there's broken limbs on something, like maybe a deer was munching on it? Little things like that give a lot of information. Do we have any more questions so far?
No.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any in the chat right now, but yes, definitely. If people have a question, please put it in the chat and I will ask.
Despite the fact that this program is called Zoom, it does not allow you to zoom in to something. So there's a bunch of birds out in the middle of the water right now. And those are actually called American coots. They are part of the rail family. Right now they're here for the fall. Sometimes you see them year round, but in much lesser numbers. Right now, they've come through for the fall migration, so we're seeing them everywhere. And they look like ducks at first, but then you kind of look at them closer and they have a much shorter beak, and it's all white, and the whole bird is black. And they have really big feet that are almost like disproportional to the rest of their body, but they help them be able to walk on all those lily pads that you see out there. They can just walk on them like they're walking on water. It's really fascinating. We have another interesting tree here that we just passed a few of them, but I was kind of saving that for a little later. But this here is called a black willow. So
That one. What happened?
All right, we seem to have lost Monsi, but we've got somebody else. Hey, everybody, if I can ask y'all to please stay on mute. That way we can still hear Monsi.
Okay.
okay, for some reason it muted me and it would not let me unmute.
Oh, that's what happened.
No. Okay, there it is. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it said host muted you, so it may have been an accident, no worries. But okay, so the black willow here actually has the same component in the bark, that it's the same chemical used for aspirin. So that medicine that you guys take to help you with your headaches and all that, that tree makes that chemical naturally.
Hey, Monsi, I have a question about some of the birds and the fish there.
Uh-huh.
Are there, you mentioned that some of the birds will migrate. The fish that are there, they're pretty much there year round, and what kind of fish are there?
The fish are year round. Once in a while, you'll get some fish that get introduced in whenever we flood. But for the most part, there's really no exchange of fish in any other way. So they stay year round. We do have alligator gar. We have a lot of catfish. We have some bass.
Tilapia was introduced.
Tilapia was introduced, and that one is invasive. So that's not something we want here, but we do have it. We have crappie. We have, I'm trying to think what else we have.
Bass, occasionally.
Yeah, we did say bass. So yeah, there's a few variety of it. Now we don't stock our lakes, so whatever's here is here. Once in a very long while they might come and stock it, but it's not normal for our lake like it is at other places.
Is there fishing allowed there?
There is. Oh, look, we have an alligator. There is fishing allowed, but you actually don't. don't often catch huge stuff. You'll usually catch some pretty small stuff. We're approaching an alligator here, one of our residents, right here by the water. Can you guys see him?
Yes, I see the water is kind of dirty.
And we'll see his head pop up. There he goes in the middle of the water now. Yeah. So you can start hearing all the birds complaining that we scared the alligator back into the water. But you'll see that evidence here. It left its little trail right in front of us right here. And now he's way at the water right over there. So I don't know that you guys can see that on the screen, but so alligators are one of our...
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Those are our
Yes.
most popular residents out here. In warmer days, you might see several of them out here. Now, they don't like it when it's super hot. They like the temperature kind of like we do. So when it's in those mid 70s, really nice and comfortable, you can see alligators everywhere. But then when it's too hot and we don't want to be out either, they don't want to be out either. They get too warm also. So they'll stay in the water. Okay, remember that water hyacinth we talked about? Highly invasive species?
Yes.
At one point in time, all of that used to be water. And now see all that stuff right there? All of that is water hyacinth that just completely overgrew and you can't see the water at all anymore. Now with the winter, it is turning brown and we're hoping that if we get a good freeze, it'll actually kill it out. So then during the winter, you'll start seeing water again. But as soon as the summer hits, it gets just like that. And no matter how much of it we try to remove or try to spray to control, unfortunately, this invasive species comes right back. So that's one of the hardest ones to try to manage. Here's some more coots in the water. All of those are that American coot we talked about. Right. We can start seeing our destination there. There used to be another mother alligator here, so I'm just looking for her now.
So the birds that are there, is there, what's the time of year when they have their hatchlings? Is that the spring?
Around spring, yeah. Yeah, around spring, you'll see a lot of their young. And actually over here, those are some younger ones that are still in their first year. So they don't have that white face yet. They just kind of have the same shape as the bird, but they don't have the same coloration. So those there are actually young ones. We know that they were hatched this year or earlier this year. All of those over there are the adults.
I saw a duck.
They do look like ducks, but these guys are actually not ducks. I don't see the mother here either. Another invasive species that we deal with around here is the Nutria, and that is a mammal. It's a rodent, pretty large rodent for that matter. It looks like a beaver, but it has like a rat tail on it. That's kind of like a good description for it. And nutrias were introduced to this area many years ago for the fur trade. And now they have spread. And those guys are pretty destructive. They consume a lot of the plant life. At one point, people believed that they could control the water hyacinth, but they did not. So that was another reason why they were brought here, not just a fur trade, was for controlling water hyacinth. And they really don't do a good job with that one. They do eat a lot of the rooted plants and destroy a lot of those plants that live in the marsh. I'm gonna hand the camera over to Jim here for a second to show you guys the water line here. So that right there, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but that right there is actually the water line from Harvey. So at one point, the water was actually that high here in this lake. So it kind of shows you how far beneath that I actually am.
How long did it take for the water to recede after Harvey?
I actually wasn't here when Harvey happened. I hadn't started here yet, but Harvey happened in August and the park reopened to the public in November. So it went down, I think, fairly quick. It probably took about a week to go down. And then the rest of that time was recovery. So they have to clean up all the trails, power wash everything, fix anything that was damaged, all the down trees, all the debris, et cetera, et cetera. Usually you end up with a lot of that around the park, and it takes several months to be able to bring it back up to normal and kind of running. So, but usually when we flood, it does take about a week or so for that water to go down. Now with Harvey, because the water came up the way it did with the rain that happened here for several days, it may have been a little more than that. It may have taken 2 weeks, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I am gonna flip the camera here around to show you guys though on this tower and we'll go up on the tower here in a second. If you see all these markers on the tower, those are record floodings. So you have, or maybe it was September, I guess, not August. We have the one from Harvey right there on the tower from 1992. And Harvey was pretty high. I'm gonna back up so you guys can see the whole tower. And then right at the very top, that is like the super record one from 1913, where the Brazos River and the Colorado River actually became one big thing. Everything just merged together because of how high that water was. Luckily, that hasn't happened again, but we can see that Harvey was a huge flood for us. Okay, so at this point, we're actually in a really interesting point of the park because 3 big ecosystems come together. So I'm gonna climb up the tower with y'all and show you guys that merge of those ecotones. That's that term we learned earlier.
Hey, Monty, I have a question about how late those trails are open. When it's dark out, are those trails closed?
We don't close them. They don't have any gates or anything to close them. So they stay open. If someone goes out on the trails at that point, it's kind of at your own risk type of thing. Hopefully you have a flashlight with you and everything you need for it. We do have an emergency number you can call after hours though, if anything were to happen. But typically once it gets dark, no one goes out here anymore. Typically. All right, we are at the top of the tower. So let's give you guys a view of everything. This is the marsh. As you see, again, can't see the water. All of this flat part, hyacinth. At one point it used to be water. And the rest is those tall grasses, which are very normal to the marsh. Minus all the invasive hyacinth though, this is what a marsh should look like. But then if we turn a little bit this way, we have a lake. And a lake is a whole other ecosystem. A lake actually needs to be deep enough so that the sunlight cannot penetrate it. Otherwise, it would be a marsh.
That's pretty.
It is, right?
Yes.
It really is beautiful. And then we turn to this side of the tower, we have a swamp. And you can see all of those trees out there. And actually, and underneath all of these plants and everything, there is water. So that is your swamp. And that holds water most of the year. Now, a lot of these plants that you see here, a lot of it is hyacinth, and then a lot of the plants that should be there, the native ones. But that's your swamp. So we're in that area of the park where all these three ecosystems come together.
Is that unusual to have those three ecosystems like that so close together, or is that pretty common?
It really depends where you are. It's not the most common sight to see so many of these ecosystems just run into each other. A lot of times there's a very clear definition between them, where there's a lake and then much further down there might be something else. But all of these are somehow related to each other. So they do in some way work together. So sometimes you might see a marsh with a lake, or maybe a lake with a swamp, but you don't always see all three in one go. You might be able to see behind all the marsh and the line back there, all of that is swamp also, that you can kind of see where the swamp runs into the marsh here.
Which direction is does the Brazos River?
Where is the Brazos River? The Brazos River is going to be more in that generic direction. So this trail here, called the Spillway Trail, takes you over towards the next lake called Elm Lake, and towards the nature center. So then, yeah, the Brazos River would be more back there somewhere. We're pretty far from it here. We're on the opposite end of the park we're at.
How big is the park overall?
It's just shy of 5,000 acres. So yeah, there's a lot of land here. Only a part of it is trails. The majority, as you see here, we try to keep it as natural as we can, not invade it in any way. We help it, like we said, in certain ways. You can see some structures right there that were formed to help the water run between places, so we don't just hold so much water in one area that it just overflows everything, but just kind of runs. But if we need to, we can close some of those gates. So we have some control of some of that. But we do try to just let things be where we can let them just be.
No, it's actually a pretty magical place. You guys haven't been out here. It's a pretty magical place. Just at a short walk, I mean, we've seen an alligator, we've seen 3 or 4 or more species of birds. There's also different kinds of plants and trees, flowers. And like most of us say, it's different every time you're out here, you come out here. I live out here. I walk these trails almost on a daily basis, and every day I see something new. So if you guys haven't been out here, this is your invitation. Come on out, come enjoy the park.
It looks like it's about 4:50, so we can kind of start heading back if you guys want to stay on with us, or if you guys have questions, we can just finish off answering some of your questions and just continuing to kind of show you guys here the beauty of where we're at.
Okay. I don't like snakes either.
You don't like snakes either? Luckily,
No.
you don't see snakes as often out here, unless.
Yeah, I know you're trying to say, because I don't like it either. It's too much poison.
Yeah. Well, we don't have walk out here, you can walk for hours and hours and never see a snake. Sometimes if you're looking for one, maybe you'll spot one, but even then, it's hard to see them. They do a really good job at hiding and staying away from people.
Okay, please don't say a word about snakes because I want to get upset again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will not talk about them anymore.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Are there any other questions out there?
I have one. How much is for the park?
The
For the
entrance
state park?
to the park is $7 per person for anyone 13 years of age and older. Anyone 12 and under comes in free.
Okay. Do y'all have like anything for people? I know a couple of the state parks had a thing for disabled people to get in.
Yeah, so there is a disability pass that you can get. And that one gives you. Okay, so that one gets the person with a disability in for free, and then a second person with them in for 50% off. And you have to apply to get that, or not apply, but you have to come into and talk to like the headquarters to get that pass.
Okay.
And you actually do have to have a form
Oh, Charlotte.
from disability.
Hey, girl.
Showing that.
How you doing?
All right. Thank you. I'm doing good.
All right, guys. Well, if we don't have any more, last call for some questions from Monse and Jim. What a great tour, and what an awesome view that is. It's just
yeah.
It's one of my favorites, especially whenever this clears up over the fall, and you can kind of stand here and see this divide between the two ecosystems. It's really, really pretty.
all right.
It's
Well,
still beautiful though.
Thank you all for showing us this beauty in the natural park, and we hope to see you all again. Will you hang out for just a minute? If anybody wants to talk offline with Monse or Jim, feel free, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.
Okay.